Genetically modified crops. We can grow them, but should we? The 20th century witnessed the development of genetically modified crops, which are cultivated plants that have been genetically engineered to include traits deemed desirable and beneficial. One can ask, was it a natural continuation of selective breeding techniques, or is it a dangerous technology that produces frankenfood? Genetically modified crops have been cultivated since 1996. Currently, 17 million farmers in 26 countries grow GM crops, and 70 countries allow their import. Yet many people object to the production of genetically modified crops. In this presentation, we will explore this biotechnology, discuss the ethical perspectives of the proponents and opponents, and analyze the legal aspect.
The basic principles of GMOs are identifying, isolating, inserting, and growing. The identification step decides the desired trait for the target crop. Such desired traits could be resistance to insects, diseases, and droughts. Once the desired trait is identified, scientists will search for an organism that possesses it. Isolation denotes the process of extracting the DNA of the desired trait from the target organism in preparation to introduce it to the target crop. One common biotechnology used to integrate the trait into the crop is recombinant DNA. Recombinant DNA can be done using a medium such as bacteria or viruses. For genetically modified plants, the main bacteria used to fulfill this job is called Agrobacterium tumefaciens. The Ti plasmid is a plasmid found in this bacterium. The first step in the process of genetic modification is the removal of that plasmid from the bacteria and the cutting of the tDNA or transfer DNA. This is done by restriction enzymes, which specialize in cleaving DNA sequences at specific sites and forming sticky ends on the plasmid. The foreign DNA with the desired trait then attaches itself to the tDNA, and DNA ligase is introduced to unify the foreign DNA with that of the tDNA. The plasmid can be reinserted into the bacterium, allowing for the agrobacterium to insert its tDNA into the chromosome of the plant cells that are then cultured. Eventually, this leads to the growing of a plant with the desired trait.
Opponents consider GM crops the next step in industrialized agriculture that has negative implications on the environment and human health. These effects include increased use of herbicides, pesticide-resistant pests, crossing with non-GM plants with potential of development of new invasive species, allergic reactions to transgenic crops, and a slight possibility of transfer of genes from GM foods into human cells. Some people also strongly believe that GM crops defy the order of nature, or God. In addition, some opponents argue that modern farming can produce enough traditional crops to feed the world, and the shortage of food is caused by distribution, access to food, and waste. One of the widely discussed ethical issues is the monopoly of the agrochemical industry and big multinational companies such as Monsanto that develop and sell GM seeds. This has led to seed monopoly worldwide, decreasing biodiversity, increasing seed prices, and robbing consumers of influence on the food sector.
Proponents for GM crops argue that humans have been manipulating plant DNA for millennia and is simply a step in the same direction. GM crops result in higher yield and thus lower food prices and fight world hunger. In addition, GM crops can be engineered to contain more nutrients than traditional crops. For example, vitamin A-enriched golden rice, which can endure suboptimal growth conditions. Proponents believe that since GM crops improve productivity, making farming more green and sustainable, special crop traits such as resistances to viruses, insects help prevent crop spoilage and waste. Herbicide-tolerant plants such as Roundup-ready crops allow better weed control and thus require less soil tillage, which reduces the fuel use, decreasing the overall carbon footprint. Many scientists believe that opposition to GM crops and foods is a result of the anti-GMO lobby that promotes alternative crops and foods that are not only expensive, but also not sustainable on a large scale and cannot feed the increasing world population.
GM food products in America are rigorously regulated by the FDA and other regulatory agencies. The process for getting a GM product approved is long and daunting and requires producers to submit safety assessment data to the satisfaction of the FDA's regulations. A very similar process goes for GM crops in the European Union. A risk assessment is done by the European Food Safety Authority on the GMOs to evaluate if they will negatively affect humans or the environment. Due to public opinions on GMOs, Bill 764 was passed by the U.S. Congress. Thanks to the bill, a national disclosure standard was set up for all GMO products by the U.S. Department of Agriculture. This legislation, which is also referred to as Public Law 114-216, prevented various standards for GMOs to be set by states. This action does not directly affect the way that GM products are regulated in the United States, but contributes towards the acceptance and integration of this biotechnology that is essential for our society. GM crop farming is a complex and controversial topic. While many countries have adopted the technology, others have condemned and restricted it due to various ethical concerns. Genetic engineering has great potential to improve farming, protect the environment, and reduce world hunger, but we must stay vigilant as this technology can transfer virtually any trait from any organism into crops, an ability that sounds almost dystopian.